Design Leader Insights is brought to you by Fuego UX. Fuego UX is a leading UX research, strategy, and design consultancy. Hey, Sue, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Hi, Alex. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, for sure. And to get started, can you give us a little bit of insight into your journey in design?
Sure thing. So I started off many moons ago. I'll say many moons. Start first trying to get into UX design just by happenstance. I actually saw a post on League of Legends for a UX researcher, and I didn't realize back then that you could. They were looking for a UX researcher with a psych degree, and I saw that. I was like, "Oh my goodness, I could do this!" So that was like my first entry point into design. And clearly, I played too much League of Legends, but that's a story for another day. But I started off there, and then I got into user interaction design. Back then, it was called like user interaction designer. So that's kind of how it started, and went from one company to others. Started in consultancies, worked on activity software. So think about like if you sign up for endurance races, that kind of stuff. Moved to B2B e-commerce, and then had a few more journeys in agencies and whatnot. So it's been an evolving process. I think I got into design when it was really becoming more mainstream and popular. Not to say it wasn't before, but I feel like my career grew with design. Now you can expect to see design everywhere, or like a team of designers. Back when I first started, less so. And then eventually over time, I moved from designer to managing design teams to eventually actually moving into design ops. It was an interesting transition. So that's kind of my high level journey today.
And that's an awesome journey. What made you switch from designer to design ops? Because I think, for better or for worse, I think the design part gets lost in design ops a lot of the time, and it's a lot more ops than design. But yeah, what made you kind of make that switch?
You asked an interesting question, because I often think about like, why did I switch? Why did my brain not automatically, just happenstance kind of migrate into operations? So I'll talk about a core memory I have when I worked at B2B e-commerce. Basically, way back when, I was running into issues with getting my designs out the door. What I mean by that is I would create a wireframe in Axure. If you know what Axure is, you know you've been in industry for a while. From now it's Figma, but again, story for another time. From there, I would feed it to my offshore developers who were working in India. Now, there's obviously a time zone difference, a language barrier, all that fun stuff, and we were just trying to put it into Jira. And my brain at the time thought, hey, if I put this in Jira with this link, they'll automatically understand what I'm trying to build, right? They would know exactly where to click in the interaction. They would know basically what's in my brain. What I realized quickly over time was that we were running into issues with developers and QA not being able to understand what I was trying to do from that user story, from my design. And they asked a lot of questions. And initially I got frustrated by that. Like, why don't they just get it? And again, this is many years ago. Now I realize it's because they weren't in the room. They had no idea what I was thinking. So I saw this and I was like, let's iterate on this process. So I remember on my Axure wireframe, I used to put a little red box that said, click here to start interactions. I tried doing that, and then quickly over time, I realized, wait, like one of my devs or one of my QAs was asking me, do you want us to code that box? And it kind of like lit up a light switch in me of like, okay, so what I assumed would be beneficial to them is not. They're taking it quite literally, rightfully so. So we evolved this process of handoff. Instead of me just throwing a wireframe, we 86 the red box, because clearly that was causing some confusion. And then I started to create videos of my interactions, but the videos were too long and no one would watch them. And so I iterated on that process again. And instead of videos, I created interaction GIFs of each interaction, because each user story is pretty specific to a specific interaction or a page. So I would create interaction GIFs that would kind of show up in the user story, the ticket, and it resolved so many issues for me. Like that to me is like the beginning of my design ops brain, is noticing a pattern of confusion, misalignment, and wanting to fix it. And to me, that process of the red box, which to this day I laugh about, because I'm like, well, of course that was a bad idea, to the video, to the interaction GIF, it's kind of like iterating on design ops over time. So that's kind of where I think I've always had that desire to make things much more efficient. And that core memory became a constant reminder throughout my career of like, how do I help people work better together? How do I work better with people to get my designs out faster?
That's funny, the red box. But let's go into like, how have you seen, now that you've been in design ops, how can design ops teams make a difference, like impact, what be it like either design or product teams that they're interacting with? How do you effectively insert design operations into a company where it's driving impact?
You ask a tricky question because I feel like this is what design ops is trying to figure out and make more mainstream and scalable as well. Design ops, in my personal opinion, it's still in the early stages of becoming a more mature part of the industry. But I think design ops is still, it's kind of what UX design used to be way back when you used to hear mentions of designers and UX design and what it meant. And now I think what is happening is as UX design evolves and mature, and now UX design is kind of common practice across most industries, you're going to see design ops slowly but surely pop up as well. When you have an org that has one designer only, saying we need design ops, kind of tricky because you kind of need scale to help justify it. And I think when it comes to how do you make design ops more effective, it's understanding what problems you're really trying to solve. And this feels very PM-y, so bear with me. The problem you're trying to solve with using design ops, in my opinion, is making sure that you're kind of removing barriers, making sure repeatable patterns are truly patterns that can be scaled for designers. And designers do the best work when they're able to get headspace to think about creativity, to think about the user, the interactions. How do you kind of clear the noise for designers so that they can truly be creative, so they can go straight into designing, obviously prototyping, user flows first and foremost, but they don't have to worry about all of the noise. And I don't want to call it noise because it kind of minimizes design ops, but all those redundancies, all the things that a designer might have to go through, how do you help handle and manage that so the designer can hop right into design? How do you get, instead of them hunting down several Figma files, how do you consolidate it into one? And sometimes people will think, oh, if I have design ops, designers will go faster. I don't think that's true. I think design ops enables your designers to be able to explore all the things they want to design for, design with, so that they can produce better results. That, to me, is what design ops should be focusing on, not making sure that they have more prototypes or more deliverables. I don't think it's a one-to-one, and I think that's going to be part of design ops evolving and coming up with its own identity.
Yeah, Sue, this has been awesome so far. I'm interested what advice you have for people who might be looking to break into design ops.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because a lot of people will think to get into design ops, I need to be a project manager or have a PMP. And I understand the merits for that, but I disagree a little bit. And here's why. To me, if you have an innate ability to understand change management, and if you have, similar to my story about the red box, of looking and finding a pattern that you want to find repeatable and scale it, that to me is kind of an indicator of design ops might be your calling, maybe even ops. And the reason why I say that is you can have a good project management background, you can come from that, but if you don't know how to work with people, it gets really challenging to be a really strong ops practitioner. Yeah. What I've learned working in design ops is it's not the tools that are challenging, it's understanding how to work with individuals, with teams, knowing that if you just say, hey, use this process, you're probably going to run into pushback because people are not going to feel like they're a part of the process or they don't have skin in the game. So you'll often hear me say, how do you make sure that people feel like they were heard, they were a part of the process so that they're more willing to accept something? It's kind of like when growing up, when your parents told you to do something, you wouldn't listen. I want to do the opposite of that, right? I want people to feel involved in the process, feel involved with knowing that they're being taken care of and heard at the same time, so that when changes do happen, and changes will happen, right? We're constantly changing with AI coming in and everything, new tech emerging. How do you help make that seamless? And that is another skill set of operations I think is really mission critical, is understanding that change is hard. How do I make it a little bit easier, a little bit more digestible over time so it doesn't come as a shock? And that to me also helps expedite whatever processes that you're trying to do as well. So that to me is the most, two things for advice: understanding how people work in change management, and also seeing those repeatable patterns and having a deep level of empathy for that. So to me, design ops isn't very different from design, from a high level POV, because you have to be empathetic to your users. You don't walk a mile in their shoes. You want to be able to quote unquote design for them, but instead of designing prototypes, you're helping support processes, day-to-day interactions. It's a similar thinking in regards to how do you get to the end result. There's a different way of applying it. I'm really excited to see how everything evolves.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, hoping it turns around and picks up a little bit. And I think you're right. It'll grow with the field, just as product and engineering ops have with those respective fields.
And I'm excited for it too. The fact that UX design has matured enough to have design operations, it's really exciting, right? We've already have product ops, we already have DevOps. So to see it at the beginning, it's kind of like, I'm really like anxious, but excited at the same time to see how it evolved and how it's going to bring in new tooling and all that fun stuff. It's going to be a journey.
I love that. Sue, thank you so much for sharing these insights today.
Happy to share and happy to see what happens with design ops over time.